Hey everybody, what is going on? Michael Cirillo here, and before we get dialed into this episode of the Dealer Playbook podcast, I want to tell you about something special that I'm doing for those of you that listen to the show. For a limited time, I'm giving away 2 chapters from my upcoming book called Don't Wait, Dominate. Now, if you're serious about taking your digital marketing to the next level, using tools that you already have, you definitely need to open a new browser or a new tab right now and go to www.thedealerplaybook.com/dominate. Look forward to seeing you there and getting you those 2 free chapters. Now on to the show. Here we go.
Hi, this is Nick Nanton from the Celebrity Branding Agency, and you are listening to the Dealer Playbook Podcast.
You're dialed in to the Dealer Playbook Podcast, where it's all about winning auto dealer strategies that deliver proven results. And now your hosts, Robert Weissman and Michael Cirillo.
Hey, what is going on? You're listening to the Dealer Playbook Podcast, session 54. We're so glad you're here, where every single week we sit down with the who's who in and out of the automotive business for you, today's automotive professionals. My name's Michael Cirillo, and I'm joined by my man, Robert Weissman.
What's going on, man? How are you?
It's like we're in the same room. Man, I'll tell you what, super excited for today's episode, and I'll tell you why. We're sitting down with a 3-time Emmy Award Winning Director, producer, and filmmaker. He's known as the top agent to celebrity experts around the world for his role in, developing and making business and professional experts through personal branding, media, marketing, and PR. Like, this guy is crazy. We're sitting down with Nick Nanton, Esquire. This is crazy, man. How'd you get connected with Nick?
Well, I've been following Nick for some time, and it's after the fact, after I was already, consumed in a lot of his, education and his websites, his blogs, what he had going on. I later found out that we had a mutual friend, being Tracy Myers, that Tracy actually, used his services to help him with the biography, the Carmen movie and stuff, as talk about in the show. But Nick is a big part and big influence on a lot of when I was in the showroom, just like you are probably listening, I used a lot of the strategies, the ideas, the techniques, and the approach that, Nick talks about. And I just, spent time getting creative on how I can spin it into it was never presented, here's how you do it in automotive, for the car industry. No, I took how he did it kind of at a whole, but then found ways to make it work in this industry. So this is a super episode. This dude is, has accomplished amazing things with, amazing experts from like Brian Tracy, again, Tracy Myers. I think he's got something in the pipeline with Cardone. It's going to be great.
Well, and I mean, like, the resume speaks for itself, because we didn't even scratch the surface in the intro there about the things. Like, this guy's been in the music industry. He became a lawyer so that he could be more efficient in the music industry. On top of all those things, I mean, been featured all over the place, like you said, with Brian Tracy, and helping Brian Tracy. Who thinks that, right? I mean, but being featured across like USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, Businessweek, all over the place, Fox News, CNBC. The guy's resume is so impressive, but then it gets even more impressive for those of you listening in, because his family's been in the car business for like 30 plus years. So, we don't want to give too much away. Let's jump into this session with our friend Nick Nanton. Here we go. All right, Nick, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Just getting ready for some big events in New York City the next few days. So I got a bunch of calls like this all day today, but they've been fun. So let's rock.
We won't tell my wife, man. That's like one of her favorite places on the planet, and she'd be so jealous if she heard you're headed there. So
I understood. My wife loves it too, but she can't come either. So all good.
Oh, so super jealous. Nice. Hey, thanks for joining with us today. Super pumped to sit down and just pick your brain for a few minutes. like Robert said pre-show, he followed you a lot and it helped him in his car, building his localized brand. And we wanted to really just pick your brain there. I followed up on some of your stuff, and I know you've been connected to our mutual friend, Tracy Myers. So, we're just super excited to be able to sit down and chat with you for a few minutes. And I think we want to just dive in. We see in the automotive industry, dealers, there's probably 20,000 plus dealers in North America, so Canada, the United States, and pretty much across the board, each of them are struggling with building the brand, not only for their dealership, but then inside of the dealership, there's all of the sales professionals who could benefit from building their own brand. And this is something that you've got a really strong presence on. What can you tell us about how or where to get started building a brand? And then, of course, what are the benefits of building a brand for, say a salesperson, for those salespeople listening in? How do they get started building their brand, and what are the benefits of that?
Sure. So there's many places to start. I think the best place to start, and it's going to sound really simple, and I think it should, that, I tell people all the time, your brand is very simple to understand. It's your story. That's it. There are so many consultants and books and all sorts of things that will try to confuse you about what your brand is. But at the end of the day, your brand is simply your story. So I like to start there. And then how effectively you tell that story is what will dictate two things: how many people you can help and how much money you can make, and whether you want to make that money for yourself or give it away, or, that's up to you. I think all those things are great, but ultimately it's all due to how effectively you tell that story. Now, the other thing you got to consider is media, because you need media because it's a medium for telling your story. And ultimately, if you use the right formats of media, and that could be anything from video to text to books to CDs to sales letters to websites to online videos, you name it. Those are all mediums for telling your story, those types of media formats. So I kind of start with all of those things. And then I lead into, the only thing that your competition cannot duplicate. Really, the only thing. We can even get into talking about patents and trademarks and all that sort of stuff. And there's ways to be close enough, or there's ways that, those are good competitive advantages, but they don't last forever. And at some point they do, particularly patents, they lapse. And when you have to publish even a patent, you actually have to publish it so everyone gets to see what you're doing, so they can slightly tweak it and take it for their own. There's all sorts of things there. So the only thing that is non-duplicable that you have in this life is yourself. And so what you really need to work on, the one thing that will really set you apart, and where I think everyone should start, is figuring out how to tell your story in a way that makes you the most uniquely suited person in the world to help the person who you want to serve solve their problem or their issue or make their life better or whatever you're going to do for them. You got to figure out, how can I tell my story effectively so that I am most uniquely suited to be the only person that they want to work with, because I'm the guy, I'm the girl, I'm the person, I'm the only person that could possibly help them with their problem, because they heard my story and they heard, where I came from, what I've been through, all that sort of stuff. I can certainly give you some frameworks for telling your
exactly what I was going to ask.
Story.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go.
Cool.
So kind of prefacing what we're about to head into, then going that route. I know from my own personal experience, as I'm sure you do too, Robert, and of course you, Nick. When it comes to yourself and like talking about yourself and coming up with your story and trying to figure out how appealing it is, that's not a simple thing to do, right?
No, it's not as complex as we want to make it sometimes, but yeah, it's a hard thing for us. Although it's not complex, it's hard because we've been taught growing up.
Self-aware. You have to be
right.
Yeah.
It is, and also we've been taught since we were young, which I think is a good thing. Not to brag, not to, and so it's really interesting. You get conceited, obnoxious, self-centered, all this stuff. You got those, which I respect a lot, and then you got the other side that's like, oh, I'm just supposed to promote myself. Okay, hey everybody, I'm the best you ever met. And I'm not such a big fan of that side, but there really is a middle ground of where if you tell your story effectively, everything will do the bragging for you without making you sound like a jerk. So, when you walk into my office and you see my Emmys on the table, you see all of our statues, all of our other awards, you see the movie posters up, you see the media that I've been in, in Forbes and USA Today and Newsweek and Wall Street Journal. Like it does all the talking for me. I don't have to say anything about it. Yeah. Everyone wants to ask me about it. So that's just a quick example there.
Your walk-in is doing the talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right on.
So let's talk some frameworks.
Yeah, I want to go in that framework.
Yeah.
So the basic framework for what we'd call an origin story is, you probably would recognize it from like any infomercial you've ever seen, and I'll make it even as corny as an infomercial so you won't forget it. So, look, hi, my name is Nick Nanton. I'm now. None of this is true. I'm just using an example. I'm 180 pounds, 2% body fat, solid muscle. My life's never been better. I'm happier, richer, more fulfilled, and whatever. But it wasn't always this way. I used to be 800 pounds. Richard Simmons had to come knock me out of the wall to get me out of my house until I discovered XYZ secret, and now I can show you the way too. So, hey, so to break that down even more simply, here's who I am now, and it's something everybody wants, but I wasn't always that way. I used to be just like you until I discovered this secret, and now I can show you how to. That's a basic infomercial formula with testimonials and stuff of people showing you that they're really not lying and they can really do this. So how I would take that in a normal kind of more world, regular example for the world would be, talking about your story in kind of three movements. When I produce our documentary films on either celebrities or, business guys, or, I did a movie for a mutual friend of ours, Tracy Myers. We really look at where somebody came from. That's one of the most important pieces that people often don't talk about where they came from, or they'll suppress a lot of the information. It's interesting because a lot of times in our past, there are certainly things that are not fun to remember, but actually, the more we relate those to other people, the more people will start to think, wow, this person is real, or just like me. Or, one of the marketing gurus I'm sure you guys have heard of, Dan Kennedy, he calls this thing dog whistles that a lot of people would like to ignore. But he says, look, he's been divorced. He's been married 3 times. His second and third wife are the same woman. He had a problem with alcoholism. He's been dead broke. But he talks about these things because people who have experienced the same thing, first of all, they'll go, oh, man, this guy's just like me.
Deeper level,
connection.
Deeper connection,
and they hear it and they perk up. People who have not experienced these things, they typically we take them as a big deal. Most people tend to just blow right over them. So he calls them dog whistles. They're things people will pay attention to. So we want to talk about our past, specifically things. Look, I don't want to know every girl you kissed since first grade. We're not talking about that, but what are the relevant events in your past that would connect everything together so that people would understand why you're the most uniquely suited. So we typically start with your past, and then we move into what you're doing now, how you're helping people, how you're innovating. Typically have some testimonials if you can that kind of validate that position. And then we move on to a small section about, and what's your vision for the future? Because if you think about it, a lot of people don't talk about that either. But I don't really want to talk to or work with somebody who is who's irrelevant, who doesn't have if you don't have a view or an image of what the future is like, or a forecast, or an idea of what's going to happen or what you want to do in the future, then you're pretty much irrelevant, because everything past right now is the future. So you really subconsciously, you got to weigh in and weave in what your vision is for the future, and kind of the more audacious it is, if you can make people believe it, even the more excited they get about it.
Awesome. So so we have, pretty much where they came from, a little bit of the backstory. Not every girl they've kissed since the first grade and whatnot. In somebody's origin story, like a future vision, giving that, as you said, step number 2, and giving their image of the future.
Yeah, let me try to think of a good example of something. So, all right, so I just made a movie on Peter Diamandis. Peter founded the X Prize. They use prize money to solve the world's grandest challenges. He's most well known for his first ever X Prize, which was a $10 million prize for private space flight, the first team to build a space vehicle that could do a suborbital flight, which means it doesn't completely orbit the Earth. It goes to some whatever the altitude is to be in the atmosphere to have weightlessness, and then come back down and repeat that flight 2 times within 10 days. Because what he realized was that, all the things that NASA was building and everything, a lot of it was not reusable. So it was really, really, really expensive. So in order to privatize space flights, some people could afford to do, because a lot of people want to go to space, you'd have to create something reusable. He also realized that NASA was kind of winding down. We had, as a country, we'd achieved our major space goal, which quite frankly, was to beat the Russians there, so we could prove we were, superior. And so there wasn't really anything new happening. So he decided to create a prize. He went to MIT and got an undergrad degree, and then he got a master's at MIT. Then he got an MD at Harvard. Like all this stuff, really, so he could maybe be an astronaut and go to space. Well, he started realizing that the NASA program was winding down. The chances of it were so slim, that he just became so motivated to go to space. He wanted to create a way to create private space flights. So he figured out by reading a book a friend gave him that when you create a prize for something, then teams compete if there's a prize big enough, and they typically spend 10 times the amount of money that the prize would be won with on the innovation. So on the X Prize, $100 million is more than that, I think, was spent by all these different teams innovating and creating what ultimately would lead to private space flight. But no one team spent that much money, but all the innovation that created was 10 times the innovation. And someone did, in fact, create a technology that would do it. They won the $10 million, and Richard Branson bought it and turned it into Virgin Galactic. So there you go. There's an example of, it's fascinating stuff, by the way, too. And I hope the movie comes out as soon as you can see it. That's the past. So what's he doing now in the present? Well, Peter is using the X Prize Foundation in order to solve other big problems. So they recently launched a Global Innovation X Prize, Global Learning X Prize, where it's a prize where the teams have to create an app essentially that will run on an Android device that they can drop basically in a village in the middle of Africa, and it will educate people of any age to basic reading, writing, and numeracy within 18 months. And they if they put it down because they're bored, that doesn't win. If they put it if whatever, and then once it's won, it'll actually be open source to solve the challenge of learning, because we won't even have it. We'll be like 1 million or 2 million teachers short to teach everybody within 10 or 15 years, some number, there's some estimate, whatever. So that's what he's working on like right now. He's innovating there. He's innovating with Eric Schmidt from Google's wife and the Wendy Schmidt Ocean Cleanup X Prize. And there's all sorts of, there's a Barbara Bush Foundation Adult Literacy X Prize. So we go through some of the new things he's working on. And then really we get into the future of him talking about how this is not in our children's lifetime, or even just our children or grandchildren's lifetime. This is in our lifetime. We're going to be an interplanetary species. We got to learn how to transport between the places. We got to learn how to communicate between the places, what technology is going to play, what the role is going to be. And he just opens people's minds up to this vast unknown that gets them excited of like, there's a lot of opportunity for the future. Yeah. There's a lot of abundance because there's more mineral resources and everything in space. They're infinite and we're all worried about scarcity here on Earth. Well, they're not. So there's an example with a real example.
So how would we take all this, especially like thinking of an automotive sales professional? How do they take these principles and craft them in? I mean, when you talk about a backstory, and I totally get that framework, and it's funny that you say it's kind of the infomercial framework. How do we how does a car salesperson make selling cars interesting? Do you know what I mean? Like hey, I used to not know how to sell cars, but then I got hired by this dealership, and now I know how to get you a car for cheap. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know where I'm going with that?
Right. Yeah, no, and yeah, I do know where you're going with that. I mean, obviously, I'd have to hear some individual stories, but let me break it down the basic way. And a lot of people are probably doing it, maybe not as effective as they could be, or in the right frameworks. But it's talking to people about things like, so if I'm selling you a minivan and you have a family, and I have a family too, I say, it's funny, when I grew up, we grew up with the station wagons. Remember those things? And if depending on the right age person, right, you got to play their strengths. Yeah, exactly. Yep. The Woody's there. And, man, we used to have that seat that was backwards. I mean, can you imagine how unsafe that was? The seat and we didn't wear seat belts and, and man, now that I have a family, I'm so glad I'm in this industry because I really know what the safest van is. And hopefully it's what you have to sell. And here it is. And here's what I like about it, because no, we don't make the kids face the back, although it might've been convenient. So we wouldn't have to hear them gabbering, but we have them in the back, and we have this safety feature. So, you can, and I can't wait until self-driving cars. Google said they'll have them within 2 years. A simple example, but it follows that same framework.
Yeah, where they came from and the future vision is when you touched on the self-driving car.
Yeah, and I mean, as you were saying all of this, I thought, well, wait a second, Tracy's done a phenomenal job at branding himself, right. And he with the Carmen documentary and bringing the whole family, growing up in the car business and all of that, and I think that certainly plays a massive part in building kind of an affinity for the community and people coming to want to buy cars from a family business and all that sort of thing, right?
It does. It's huge. You would have no idea until you actually did it yourself, really, on how effective that is. Because a lot of people would say, "Oh, Tracy, nobody wants to see your story." But people started calling in. I mean, he sent me some of the voicemails early on, like, "Man, your story inspired me so much." And then now they know he's not just a spoiled brat kid who was just given this dealership. His first day he got there, he showed up in a suit, thought he was gonna be selling cars. He'd been selling cars at someone else's dealership, but his dad made him start out from the bottom, washing cars, and for a reason. So he'd learn, everything from the inside out, bottom up, not just being another spoiled kid who ruined his dad's legacy with a bad dealership. I mean, and all these things, even I would say for the clients I do these types of things for, most of their employees and actually a lot of their family doesn't even know the stories.
Yeah. And everybody loves a good story. I mean, it's just how we communicate. So, I mean, they'll be, especially Tracy's is so good that, it's worth watching.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, that's actually, we write about that in our book, Story Selling. That's actually a chemical thing. When you hear a story, your brain emits a chemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin is kind of like the love hormone in your body. It's not what Rush Limbaugh got in trouble for. That's OxyContin. That is a very different controlled substance. This is oxytocin. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I'll be here all week. And table 7, your pizza's ready. But anyway, oxytocin is a natural hormone, and it's given off in parental bonding and breastfeeding, and we're doing a lot of research. I mean, not us, but there's a lot of research being done on it by the human race right now. And one of the things that it does is it emits a hormone that makes you trust more. And so when you tell a story effectively, it draws people right in, and actually there's a chemical reaction in their brain which makes them, at the end of the day, makes them trust you more. There's a lot to that, but I'll also say that an interesting thing about telling stories is that, there's two sides of the brain. The left side of the brain is kind of the analytical side. The right side of the brain is kind of the creative side. And if you ask people what side of the brain do stories appeal to, everyone would say, I mean, I do it all the time. 99% of people say the right side of the brain, the creative side. And I always ask that question, of course, because it's a setup, because it's wrong. And scientists have proven that the left side of the brain, the analytical side of the brain, is actually the side of the brain that stories appeal to, because they can make sense of facts that otherwise don't make sense to them. So if I can give you the history of Scotland to read, and you're going to try to belabor over it, or I can tell you the story of Braveheart. I'll let you watch the movie and just see Mel Gibson kicking ass, which is fun too. But your brain, the logical side of your brain actually likes Braveheart much better because it can make sense of the facts it otherwise had no context for.
No doubt.
Interesting.
Definitely. Yeah,
man, this is powerful stuff. So we've talked about the importance of building a brand, how to get started doing it through storytelling. You've given us a framework, and some really cool examples. What's the next step? I mean, so we know how to get started. How do people start executing this? I know you mentioned media. Are they hitting social media? Are they writing books? Are they doing documentaries? Like, what can they take advantage of? Like, what do you suggest are the best ways for them to kind of start leaking this information out and then driving eyes towards their brand?
Yeah, the first thing to do is start testing it on real live human beings, so you don't spend a bunch of time telling, because you'll find out with pretty instant feedback from your avatar, perfect customer, or typical customer, what resonates and what doesn't. If you start talking about things that don't resonate with them, it'll be a waste of time. But when you get it dialed in, I would start using it in whatever formats are available to you. So, I mean, is it writing a blog post? Is it having an article written about you in the third person that you use in your marketing? I mean, so all the things that Tracy Myers does, if any car salesman would do a tenth of it, they would just crush it. So, Tracy's a best-selling author. He's had articles written on who he is and where he came from, what he does. I mean, if a salesman were to give these types of things to their prospects after they leave from the test drive and maybe they weren't ready to buy today and they send them home with some stuff. I mean, imagine that. I mean, nobody's doing that. Nobody's sending any prospect out with physical stuff that validates why they're the expert they should buy their car from. I mean, they're just not doing it. So do whatever's accessible to you. Sure, I love the documentary format. It's my favorite. It's just fun and it's engaging, but not everybody will have the budget right now or the resources or the time to do that. So don't worry about it. Don't just say, oh, I can't do that. I mean, I always tell my clients, the most successful clients I have are the ones who never ask the wrong question or they don't ask the question. They say, yeah, well, that's cool, but I can't do that. The people who are the most successful look at everything, whether it's an ad in the newspaper, whether it's this podcast, and they say, that's interesting. How might I make that work? Even in an industry where it looks like it is impossible. If you could constantly ask yourself that one question, how might that work in my business? You will crush everybody.
And also that it doesn't have to be on such a big scale or at such a long form piece of content like Carmen. It could be a 5-minute video that they make for YouTube that just and even put it on CD like you said, because I hate to say that. I mean, or on DVD rather. I've started getting rid of my DVDs because there's something about like the big DVD collection it doesn't have that cool look anymore like it used to. That used to be like a cool look. But you're right. I mean, so many people, the majority of people are still though, and that's something hard that they can hold in, but it could be a 5-minute video that they just do that just give them their documentary,
Absolutely. There's many formats you can use, and just start with the one that you like the best. If you like writing, write. If you like speaking, record it. If you like video, figure out what would be fun for you. If it's not going to be fun, you're never going to do it. So I try to make everything I do at least 51% fun, or I'm never going to do it. So figure out what would be fun for you. Would it be working with your son who's really into video stuff, and you could bond with him over him helping you do this video? I mean, figure out what would be fun. Start there.
Good.
Awesome information, Nick. Man, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing. That was a wealth of information, and that's so much more. I think that there's so many things that I want to just execute on. I feel super pumped to do that. I know those listening in will want to execute on this stuff and follow your advice. And like you said, just get doing something that you enjoy and absolutely crush it. But thanks again, man, for being on the show with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, and there you have it. That was Mr. Nick Nanton, Esquire, and, all the above. The guy's a lot of energy. He's got a lot of things going on, and, hence why we took the time with him that we could get, and I think he delivered a lot of value. Michael, what did you think? I know you're pretty impressed with this guy, man.
You can always tell, how they come out of the gates kind of swinging, right? Like when you sense their passion and just like their you can sense the thrill they get about talking about their craft. And that was my first impression. I mean, I don't even think I really asked a question. I mean, I was kind of fumbling there a little bit, but he just he knew where to take it, and he had all the information right at the top of your head. And I mean, to me, I know we shy away from using the term expert, especially in the car industry, but when you experience that level of passion and that level of knowledge right out of the gates, where they're not having to think about what they're going to say, they know what they know. To me, that's an expert. And then, I mean, look at the guy's resume, like we talked about pre-show. I love the concept of, that whole infomercial thing, because there's so many guys that we follow in the marketing world who also reference the whole, infomercial framework. And I mean, for those of you listening in, that's such a simple place to start, just kind of filling in the blanks to get your brand, the juice is flowing. One thing we didn't really talk about, though, I mean, we touched on it, but we didn't really talk about the first step to doing the I guess the profile or the framework is to really identify who it is that you're trying to reach out to in the first place. Like your brand, in your brand, you won't be able to reach out to every single person and resonate with everybody. And we've mentioned this in past episodes. It's you have to be valuable to somebody, not worthless to everybody. And that's that's what you want to focus on in your brand. So super excellent show for sure.
Yeah, definitely, man. So you want to get more from Nick? Where can they catch up with more of his info? Good blog, lots of data. I definitely would check. It's on my daily routine for sites and blogs that I check out. What's the URL on that?
Yeah, I'd check out, and we'll link to this in the show notes at www.thedealerplaybook.com/54, if you can believe it, 54 episodes. But you can check them out, celebritybrandingagency.com. Again, we'll link to you in the show notes. Listen, guys, we love that you guys are listening in every week. We love the feedback we're getting. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher Radio, but we would love times infinity a review from you on iTunes. So definitely go check that out. We'll link you up in the show notes. We would love and appreciate you forever. And we'll catch up with you guys next time.